The plasma cannon fire lit up the observation deck of the UES Prometheus as Captain Sarah Chun watched her world change forever. Through the reinforced viewport, the agricultural domes of New Valoran burned like dying stars against the black void of space. Each explosion sent shockwaves through her chest, not from the vacuum of space, but from the knowledge that millions of innocent lives were being snuffed out with clinical precision. "Captain, we're receiving multiple distress signals from the surface," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, his voice cracking. They're targeting civilian centers." Sarah's knuckles went white as she gripped the command rail. The Galactic Council fleet hung in perfect formation around the Valoran homeworld, their massive dreadnoughts unleashing destruction with the methodical efficiency of an extermination protocol. No warning, no negotiation, just death raining down on humanity's first and only true allies in the galaxy. "Why?" whispered Commander Blake from beside her. "The Valorans never hurt anyone. They're pacifists." Sarah knew why. 3 months ago, the Valorans had shared their quantum compression technology with Earth's military, despite the Council's explicit prohibition against uplifting lesser species. The blue-skinned, gentle beings had argued that humans possessed something rare among galactic civilizations: the ability to see beyond their own survival to genuine friendship. They had been willing to risk everything for that bond. Now they were paying the ultimate price. "Incoming transmission from the Council flagship," the communications officer announced. The holographic image of Archon Thexenar materialized on the bridge. The insectoid being's compound eyes reflected no emotion as his mandibles clicked in what passed for speech among his kind. "Human vessel, you will observe and learn. This is the consequence of defying the natural order. Your primitive species allied with criminals who violated our most sacred laws. They shared technology in the spirit of friendship," Sarah shot back. "Since when is that a crime worthy of genocide?" Thexenar's antennae twitched with what might have been amusement. "Your species has existed for mere millennia. We have maintained galactic peace for 50 million years. The Valorans knew the penalty for their actions. You will return to your insignificant world and inform your leaders that this mercy demonstration is complete. Attempt to interfere, and Earth will share their fate." The transmission cut off as another wave of bombardment struck the planet below. Sarah watched the death of civilization through tears she refused to shed. The Valorans had built cities that floated like jewels above crystalline seas. They had composed music that could heal emotional trauma. They had developed art forms that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. All of it was burning. "Captain," Rodriguez's voice was barely audible. "Long-range sensors are detecting Council ships moving toward the outer colonies. Valoran refugees. They're hunting down the survivors." Something cold and sharp crystallized in Sarah's chest. She thought of Ambassador Kiraven, who had spent months on Earth teaching children about the wonders of the galaxy. She remembered how the Valoran diplomat had wept with joy when humanity's first interstellar ship had successfully tested their gifted technology. The ambassador had called it a moment of hope for the universe. Kiraven was down there somewhere, burning. "Set course for Earth," Sarah commanded, her voice steady despite the inferno raging in her heart. "Maximum burn." "Captain, the Council ships are faster. They'll intercept us before we reach the jump point," Blake warned. "No, they won't." Sarah turned from the viewport, and her crew stepped back at what they saw in her eyes. "They think we're primitives. They think we'll run home and cower. They have no idea what they've just awakened." She activated the ship's internal communications. "All hands, this is the captain. You've seen what happened here today. The Galactic Council has declared that mercy is weakness, that friendship is a crime, and that genocide is justice. They believe humans are too primitive to matter, too weak to respond, too civilized to seek justice for our murdered friends." Her voice carried through every corridor and compartment of the ship. "They're about to learn exactly how wrong they are. We're going home, but not to surrender. We're going home to prepare for war. And when we return to this cursed system, we won't be alone. Earth is about to show the galaxy what happens when you slaughter our family." As the Prometheus broke atmosphere, Sarah took one last look at the dying world below. The Valorans had given humanity the stars. Now humanity would paint those stars red with vengeance. The emergency session of the United Earth Congress convened 6 hours after Captain Chen's testimony concluded. Representatives from every nation, colony, and orbital habitat filled the great chamber carved into Luna's surface, their faces reflecting the same mixture of grief and rage that had consumed Sarah during her journey home. Secretary General Maria Santos stood at the central podium, her usually composed demeanor shattered by the weight of what she was about to propose. The footage Captain Chun brought back leaves no room for doubt. The Galactic Council has committed an act of genocide against our closest allies. 6 billion Valorans are dead. Their crime was extending friendship to humanity. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Representatives shouted demands for immediate military action, while others called for diplomatic solutions. Santos raised her hand for silence, but the cacophony continued until Admiral Harrison Kane stepped forward. Kane had commanded Earth's defense forces for 20 years. His scarred face and cybernetic arm told the story of humanity's violent past, but his eyes held something new. A cold calculation that made seasoned warriors step back. The Council believes we're primitives. They've studied our history and concluded that we're too young, too fractured, and too weak to pose a threat to their 50-million-year empire. His voice carried across the chamber like a blade. They're right about one thing. We are young, but they've mistaken youth for weakness, and that will be their fatal error. Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, Earth's leading xenobiologist, stood from her seat. Admiral, we've analyzed every scrap of intelligence the Valorans shared with us. The Council controls over 10,000 worlds. Their fleets number in the millions. Even if we mobilized every ship and weapon on Earth, we'd be outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Kane's smile was sharp enough to cut diamond. Doctor, you're thinking like them. You're thinking about fair fights and honorable combat. But humanity didn't claw its way to the top of Earth's food chain by fighting fair. We survived ice ages, plagues, and our own stupidity because we adapt, we innovate, and we never stop fighting when something matters. He activated the chamber's holographic display, showing a tactical map of known space. The Council rules through fear and overwhelming force. They've never faced an enemy that refuses to be intimidated. They've never encountered a species that views impossible odds as a personal challenge. Santos nodded grimly. What are you proposing, Admiral? Total war. Not the clean, civilized conflicts the Council expects, but the kind of war that made our ancestors legends. We're going to show them what predators can do when they're properly motivated. Representative Zhang Wei from the Mars colony raised his hand. Admiral, even if we had the military capacity, which we don't, how do we reach their territory? Our fastest ships would take decades to cross the galaxy. Kane's cybernetic eye glowed as he accessed the ship's tactical database. 3 years ago, the Valorans shared their quantum compression drive technology with us. We've been using it for peaceful exploration. But Dr. Morrison's team at the Titan Research Station has been working on something else. The hologram shifted to show technical schematics that made several representatives gasp. We call it the Void Walker Protocol. It's a one-way compression system that can move objects instantaneously across galactic distances. The catch is that anything sent through arrives with approximately 97% of its mass converted to pure kinetic energy. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Dr. Reeves whispered, "You're talking about turning our ships into relativistic weapons." "Not just ships," Kane corrected. "Asteroids, moons, anything we can compress and aim. The Council thinks in terms of fleets and armies. We're going to think in terms of extinction events." Santos struggled to find her voice. "Admiral, the collateral damage, innocent civilians, were incinerated without warning on New Valoran," Kane finished coldly. "The Council set the rules of engagement. We're simply going to play by them." Representative Johnson from the African Union stood shakily. "This isn't who we are. We're better than this." Kane turned to face him, and the representative stepped back from the fury in his eyes. "The Valorans thought we were better than this too. They believed in our potential for peace and growth. The Council murdered them for that faith. So tell me, Representative Johnson, what exactly are we better than? Are we better than avenging our friends? Are we better than ensuring this never happens again? The chamber fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Finally, Santos spoke. How long would you need to prepare? 6 months to build the compression arrays. Another 6 to target and deploy the first wave. The Council will never see it coming because they can't conceive of a species that would sacrifice everything for vengeance. Santos looked around the chamber at faces that had transformed from diplomatic politeness to something far more primal. All in favor of authorizing the Void Walker Protocol? The vote was unanimous. As representatives filed out to begin the most ambitious military project in human history, Kane remained behind with Santos. Maria, you understand what we're becoming? She nodded slowly. The monsters the Valorans never believed we could be. No, Kane corrected. We're becoming exactly what they always knew we were. The Valorans didn't love us despite our capacity for violence. They loved us because of it. They saw a species willing to fight for what matters. Outside the chamber's windows, Earth turned in its eternal dance, unaware that its children were about to remake the galaxy in fire and fury. The asteroid mining facility at Ceres had been transformed into something that would have terrified the Valorans' gentle souls. What had once been a peaceful extraction operation now resembled a weapons factory designed by mad gods. Massive compression arrays stretched across the asteroid's surface like mechanical spiders, their arms reaching toward the void to grasp chunks of rock and metal that would become instruments of apocalypse. Commander Lisa Park watched from the observation deck as another test firing commenced. A football-sized piece of iron was compressed, accelerated, and fired at a derelict Earth ship positioned 1,000 kilometers away. The impact lasted less than a nanosecond, but the explosion lit up space like a miniature star being born and immediately dying. Compression efficiency is now at 96.8%, reported Chief Engineer Martinez, his voice carrying the exhaustion of 6 months without real sleep. We're ready for the full-scale deployment. Park nodded, though the gesture felt hollow. The past months had changed everyone involved in the project. They had become something new, something harder. The laughter that once echoed through the facility's corridors had been replaced by grim efficiency. The casual conversations had given way to technical discussions about mass ratios and target selection. Show me the target list, Park commanded. The holographic display materialized between them, showing a three-dimensional map of council space with red markers indicating primary targets. Each marker represented billions of lives, entire civilizations that had existed for millennia longer than humanity had possessed fire. We've identified 47 critical infrastructure nodes, Martinez explained. Military shipyards, administrative centers, communication hubs. The computers project that eliminating these targets will reduce council operational capacity by 73% within the first hour. Park studied the display with eyes that had grown cold over the months. Somewhere among those targets was the system where Thexan had delivered his ultimatum, where he had called the Valoran genocide a mercy demonstration. That system would be first. What about civilian casualties? Asked Dr. Sarah Kim, the project's chief xenobiologist. She had been added to the team to ensure they understood the full scope of what they were about to do. Martinez's jaw tightened. Conservative estimates suggest approximately 12 billion immediate casualties, with secondary effects potentially reaching into the hundreds of billions. The number hung in the air like a physical weight. Dr. Kim spoke quietly. That's more than the entire population of Earth. It's less than the population of the Valoran Empire was, Park replied without emotion. Before the council decided to demonstrate their mercy, a soft chime indicated an incoming priority transmission. Admiral Kane's image materialized in the communication array, his cybernetic eye glowing with an intensity that made the room's occupants step back. Commander Park, what's your status? Ready for deployment, Admiral. All compression arrays are operational, target acquisition is complete, and the firing sequence is programmed. We can begin the attack on your command. Kane nodded slowly. Commander, before we cross this line, I want you to understand something. After today, Humanity will be known throughout the galaxy as the species that brought extinction to civilizations older than our solar system. We will be feared, hated, and hunted by every surviving member of the galactic community." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "We will also be the species that proved friendship matters more than fear, that loyalty matters more than survival, and that some things are worth burning the universe to protect." Park felt something shift inside her chest, a warmth that she had thought lost forever during the months of preparation. "Admiral, the Valorans gave us the stars. Today we honor that gift." "Begin the firing sequence," Kane commanded. The first compression array hummed to life with a sound like reality being torn apart. An asteroid the size of Manhattan was compressed into a particle smaller than a grain of sand and accelerated to 97% of light speed. It would travel across the galaxy in an instant, arriving at its target with the force of a stellar collision. One by one, the other arrays followed suit. Chunks of matter that had floated peacefully in space for billions of years were transformed into weapons of unimaginable destruction and hurled across the vast emptiness toward targets that had no idea what was coming. "First wave deployed," Martinez reported. "Impact in 3, 2, 1. The galaxy convulsed. Even at their vast distance, the deep space sensors detected the massive energy signatures as 47 Council worlds died simultaneously. Entire star systems flickered as artificial suns were born from the kinetic energy of humanity's fury. Dr. Kim stared at the sensor readings with tears streaming down her face. "What have we become?" Park watched the display showing energy signatures that represented the death of ancient civilizations. "We've become what the Valorans always believed we could be. We've become the species that never forgets its friends and never forgives their murderers." The second wave of projectiles was already being prepared. Humanity's war against the galaxy had only just begun, and the Council was about to learn that some bonds are written in fire across the stars. In the depths of space, automated distress signals began broadcasting from Council territories, their panic transmissions carrying news that would reshape galactic civilization forever. Earth had retaliated with fury, and nothing would ever be the same. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in chaos 18 hours after the first wave of Earth's retaliation. The great chamber that had once echoed with the measured debates of ancient civilizations now rang with panic, accusations, and the sound of a galactic order collapsing in real time. Archon Thexanar stood before the massive viewscreen displaying the destruction reports, his compound eyes reflecting images of devastation that defied comprehension. 47 worlds had been struck simultaneously with weapons that shouldn't exist, wielded by a species that shouldn't possess such technology. "The humans have somehow weaponized our own quantum compression technology," reported Science Directorate Leader Zalvesh, her crystalline form trembling with frequencies that spoke of deep terror. Each projectile carried the kinetic energy equivalent to a medium-sized stellar collapse. "The precision of the targeting suggests intelligence-gathering capabilities we never suspected they possessed." Council member Vrexha, representing the militant Korath Empire, slammed his armored fist against his podium. "Impossible! We monitored their technology levels constantly. They barely possessed interstellar flight. How could primitives develop relativistic weapons?" Thexenar's mandibles clicked in a pattern that conveyed growing dread. "Because we taught them to think like us instead of understanding how they actually think. We assumed they would respond to the Valoran extinction with fear and submission. We never considered they might respond with genocidal innovation." The chamber's communication array chimed with incoming priority signals from across Council space. Fleet Admiral Korthvex appeared via hologram, his usually perfect military bearing shattered by exhaustion and disbelief. "Honored Council, I'm transmitting from the ruins of the Hegemony Naval Yards. The human weapons didn't just destroy our facilities, they sterilized entire systems. Mechlin Prime is gone. The Kardash Command Center is an expanding cloud of superheated plasma. Our industrial capacity has been reduced by 74% in a single attack." Another hologram materialized beside him, Intelligence Director Sithmir, her pale features reflecting the horror of new understanding. "Council members, we've intercepted human communications." This was not their full response. Our analysis suggests they're preparing for a sustained campaign of systematic extermination. The words hit the chamber like physical blows. Species that had ruled the galaxy since before Earth's sun ignited struggled to comprehend the scale of what they faced. Counselor Yithran, eldest of the council, spoke with a voice that carried the weight of 50 million years of accumulated wisdom. In all our history, no species has ever responded to a demonstration of power with such completeness. What manner of beings did we awaken? Thexenar accessed the archives his people had compiled about humanity during their initial contact protocols. The data scrolled past his vision. A young species, technologically primitive, politically fractured, with a disturbing tendency toward violence but showing promise for eventual civilized behavior. We missed something fundamental, he realized aloud. Every analysis focused on their limitations, their youth, their lack of advanced technology. We never properly studied their motivations. He brought up recordings of human Valoran diplomatic exchanges, forcing himself to watch what they had dismissed as irrelevant emotional bonding. He saw human children laughing with Valoran educators. He witnessed human scientists weeping with joy as they received technological gifts. He observed the deep, genuine affection that had grown between the species. They don't fight for territory or resources, Thexenar whispered, and the chamber fell silent. They fight for each other. The implications rippled through the council like seismic shocks. Species that had conducted warfare for millions of years suddenly faced an enemy whose motivations they couldn't comprehend. How do you negotiate with beings who valued emotional bonds over survival? How do you intimidate creatures who viewed impossible odds as motivational challenges? What are our options? Demanded Vrexha. We still outnumber them massively. Our remaining fleets could glass their pathetic planet in hours. Intelligence Director Sithmir's laugh was bitter as stellar radiation. With what fleets? Our analysis of their attack patterns suggests they have complete real-time intelligence about our positions. Every major military installation has been destroyed. Our shipyards are gone. Our command structures are in ruins. She brought up tactical displays that painted a picture of systematic annihilation. They're not fighting a war, Counselor Vrexha. They're conducting an extermination campaign with surgical precision. Every target was chosen to maximize damage to our ability to respond while minimizing their own exposure to retaliation. Science Directorate Leader Zalvesh processed data streams from across their territory. Energy signatures suggest they're preparing additional waves. Conservative estimates indicate they possess enough compressed matter to destroy every inhabited system in Council space 3 times over. The ancient chamber, which had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations, had never witnessed anything like the fear that now gripped its occupants. They were beings accustomed to existing at the apex of galactic civilization, secure in their overwhelming technological and numerical superiority. We need to consider surrender, whispered Counselor Yithran, and the words echoed like thunder. Thexenar's compound eyes fixed on the view screen showing real-time feeds of human industrial facilities that were somehow producing weapons capable of sterilizing star systems. To whom do we surrender? We killed their closest allies. We demonstrated that friendship with humans is punishable by extinction. What possible reason would they have to show us mercy? The question hung in the chamber like a death sentence. Outside the council's windows, space itself seemed darker, as if the universe had lost some fundamental source of light. Humanity's second wave was already racing across the galaxy, carrying news that the age of council dominance was ending in fire and fury. The human fleet that emerged from quantum compression above the Thexenar home system was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Where council ships were elegant monuments to ancient technology, the human vessels looked like they had been forged in the heart of a dying star and tempered in the fury of countless wars. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching as his battle group took positions around the Council's capital world. 60 ships, each one built in the 8 months since the Valoran genocide, each one designed with a single purpose: making the galaxy's former masters understand the price of murdering humanity's friends. Admiral, we're receiving surrender signals from the orbital defense platforms, reported Commander Stevens. The planetary government is requesting immediate negotiations. Kane's cybernetic eye focused on the blue-green world below, where billions of Thexanar lived in cities that had stood for millennia. Once, he might have felt something approaching sympathy for them. That capacity had died with the Valorans. Put me through to the planetary command center. Archon Thexanar's image materialized in the communication array, and Kane was satisfied to see that the insectoid being's compound eyes reflected genuine terror. The Archon's mandibles clicked rapidly in patterns that spoke of desperate panic. Human Admiral, we surrender unconditionally. We acknowledge our error in the Valoran matter and are prepared to discuss reparations and— Stop talking, Kane interrupted, his voice carrying the cold finality of vacuum itself. 8 months ago, you told me that your species had maintained galactic peace for 50 million years. You called the extinction of 6 billion innocent beings a mercy demonstration. You explained that this was the consequence of defying the natural order. Kane stepped closer to the holographic display, and Thexanar recoiled from the fury in his eyes. I'm here to demonstrate a new natural order, one where murdering humanity's friends results in consequences you cannot imagine. The Archon's voice cracked with desperation. Admiral, we were maintaining stability across 10,000 worlds. The Valorans violated protocols that have kept the galaxy peaceful for— Peaceful? Kane's laugh was sharp enough to cut through armor plating. You call genocide peaceful? You call the systematic suppression of younger species peaceful? You've ruled through fear for so long that you've forgotten what actual peace looks like. He gestured toward the view screen showing the Council fleet's scattered remains floating in space around their homeworld. Where are your mighty dreadnoughts now, Archon? Where are the fleets that kept 10,000 worlds in line through intimidation? You destroyed them all, Thexanar whispered. Every major installation, every strategic resource, every command center. How did a primitive species accomplish what no civilization has managed in 50 million years? Kane smiled, and the expression made hardened veterans on his bridge step backward. By understanding something your ancient wisdom never grasped. You see, Archon, the Valorans didn't share their technology with us because they thought we were civilized. They shared it because they recognized what we really are. He activated the ship's tactical display, showing human industrial installations across dozens of star systems. In 8 months, humanity had transformed from a single system species to a galactic power capable of projecting force across vast distances with precision that defied belief. We're predators, Archon. We're a species that evolved to hunt things bigger and stronger than ourselves. We've been doing it for millions of years. The only difference now is that we're hunting across star systems instead of across continents. The Archon's form trembled with frequencies that spoke of species-deep terror. What do you want from us? Kane's cybernetic eye blazed with cold fire. Justice. The same kind of justice you delivered to the Valorans. Complete, final, and absolute. You're going to exterminate us, Thexanar stated, and there was a strange acceptance in his voice. Wrong, Kane corrected. Extermination is what you did to the Valorans. Quick, clean, efficient. What's going to happen to your species is something far more educational. He gestured to his communications officer, who began broadcasting on all frequencies throughout the Thexanar system. Citizens of the former Galactic Council, you are now subjects of the human colonial authority. Your government has been dissolved. Your military has been eliminated. Your civilization, as you knew it, has ended. Kane returned his attention to the Archon. You will live, Thexanar. Your species will survive. But you will spend every remaining day of your existence serving the civilizations you once oppressed. You will rebuild what you destroyed. You will heal what you wounded. And every time you feel the urge to complain about your circumstances, you will remember 6 billion Valorans who will never have the chance to rebuild anything. The transmission to the planet continued. Former Council worlds that cooperate with human authority will be protected and allowed to maintain their cultures under our guidance. Former Council worlds that resist will discover that humanity's capacity for creative destruction has no limits. Throughout the system, automated beacons began broadcasting the same message in every known galactic language. The age of council dominance was over. The age of human supremacy had begun, built on the ashes of murdered friends and the fury of a species that never forgot. As the retribution took position over the capital city, Cain allowed himself one moment of satisfaction. The Valorans had believed in humanity's potential for both creation and destruction. Today, the galaxy would understand that they had been right about both. The stars themselves seemed to burn brighter, illuminated by the fire of human vengeance finally satisfied. 5 years after the fall of the Galactic Council, Admiral Cain stood in the Memorial Garden on New Valoran II, watching human children play alongside young beings from a dozen different species. The crystal towers that rose around them sang with harmonies that would have made the original Valorans weep with joy, though their creators were gone forever. The garden had been built on the exact coordinates where Ambassador Kiraven's home had stood before the Council's bombardment. Cain came here every year on the anniversary, not to celebrate their victory, but to remember what it had cost. "Admiral," a voice behind him spoke in the melodic tones of the Silix, one of the first species to willingly join humanity's new galactic order. "The ceremonies are beginning." Cain nodded but didn't turn away from the memorial wall where 6 billion names were etched in stone that had been quarried from the ruins of the Council's former capital. Each name represented a life that had ended because they had extended friendship to humanity. The weight of that debt could never be fully repaid. The past 5 years had transformed the galaxy in ways that would have seemed impossible during the Council's reign. Species that had been suppressed for millennia were now free to develop their own technologies and cultures. Trade flowed freely between systems that had been kept isolated by Council doctrine. Art and music and literature flourished as civilizations shared their unique perspectives without fear of retribution. But Cain knew the price of this renaissance. In the ruins of former Council worlds, entire populations labored to rebuild what their governments had destroyed during 50 million years of oppression. The Thexanar had been reduced from galactic overlords to construction workers, forced to use their own bodies to repair the damage their policies had caused. It was justice, but it was also a burden that sometimes kept Cain awake during the deep space watches. Dr. Elizabeth Reeves approached through the garden paths, her hair now gray from the stress of managing humanity's rapid expansion. "The reports from the outer territories are encouraging," she said quietly. "The Moldani have successfully restored 3 of their lost colony worlds. The Viridian art renaissance is producing works that are revolutionizing our understanding of dimensional aesthetics." Cain finally turned from the memorial wall. "And the resistance movements?" "Down to scattered cells in the outer rim territories. Most of the former Council loyalists have either accepted the new order or been pacified." Reeves used the euphemism that had become standard for describing humanity's method of dealing with those who refused to adapt to post-Council reality. They walked together toward the ceremony site, where representatives from hundreds of worlds had gathered to commemorate the anniversary. Cain saw faces that reflected every stage of galactic evolution. Ancient species that remembered the early days of the Council, young civilizations that had never known freedom before humanity's intervention, and artificial intelligences that had been created in the wake of the new technological sharing agreements. Secretary General Santos stepped up to the speaking platform, her bearing showing the weight of governing a galaxy that had never asked to be ruled by humans. 5 years ago, humanity faced a choice, she began, her voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "We could accept the murder of our friends as the price of galactic stability, or we could show the universe that some things matter more than peace." Cain watched the faces in the crowd as Santos continued. He saw gratitude from representatives of liberated species, fear from former Council supporters, and uncertainty from beings who still didn't understand what humanity had become. "Today, we remember 6 billion Valorans who died because they believed in friendship," Santos said. "But we also acknowledge the billions more who have died in the conflicts that followed our response. Freedom is never free, and justice is never clean." A young Valoran approached Cain during the moment of silence that followed. This one had been born in the refugee camps after the genocide, raised by human families who had adopted the survivors. Her blue skin and gentle features were a painful reminder of what had been lost. "Admiral Cain," she said in accented English, "my people have a saying, The stars remember what the planets forget. Do you think the galaxy will remember why this war was necessary? Cain looked into her eyes and saw the future that humanity was building. Not perfect, not peaceful, but honest in a way the Council's reign had never been. Your people taught us that friendship matters more than fear, he replied. The galaxy will remember that lesson because we'll never let them forget it. As the ceremony concluded and representatives began the long journey back to their worlds, Cain remained in the garden. The children had resumed their games, their laughter echoing off the crystal towers in harmonies that spoke of hope despite the darkness that surrounded them. The Valorans had given humanity the stars. In return, humanity had remade those stars in fire and fury, creating a galaxy where friendship was protected by force and peace was maintained through the memory of war. It wasn't the gentle universe the Valorans had dreamed of, but it was one where their sacrifice would never be forgotten. Above them, human patrol ships moved through the stellar lanes, carrying the promise that no species would ever again face extinction for the crime of offering friendship. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity's capacity for vengeance. Now it would learn to trust humanity's capacity for protection. The stars burned brighter in the new order, illuminated not by ancient wisdom but by the fire of bonds that death itself could not break. Commander Sarah Chan stood in the observation lounge of the UES New Valoran, watching the construction of humanity's greatest monument to their fallen friends. The massive space station, built in the exact coordinates where the Valoran homeworld had once orbited, stretched across 50 kilometers of void like a crystalline flower blooming in the darkness. 10 years had passed since the Council's fall, and the galaxy bore little resemblance to the rigid hierarchy that had once ruled among the stars. Where ancient bureaucracies had stifled innovation for millennia, a chaotic explosion of creativity now flourished under humanity's protective umbrella. Species that had been forbidden from developing certain technologies were now pushing the boundaries of science in ways that amazed even their human overseers. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command," announced Lieutenant Torres, her voice carrying the crisp efficiency that had become standard in humanity's expanded fleet. Sarah nodded, though her attention remained fixed on the construction crews working outside. Beings from dozens of species labored together, their various physiologies perfectly suited to different aspects of the massive project. Former council slaves worked alongside their former masters, all united by humanity's simple but inflexible rule. Everyone contributed to rebuilding what had been destroyed. The holographic image of Admiral Cain materialized beside her, though 10 years of governing a galaxy had aged him far beyond his biological years. His cybernetic eye had been joined by additional augmentations, technological solutions to the physical toll of managing an empire that spanned millions of star systems. "Sarah, we have a situation developing in the Outer Rim territories," Cain began without preamble. "Deep space sensors have detected unknown ships massing beyond the galactic edge. The configuration doesn't match any known Council remnant forces or resistance cells." Sarah turned from the viewport, her expression sharpening with the instincts that had kept her alive through humanity's conquest of the galaxy. "How many ships are we talking about?" "Conservative estimates suggest a fleet numbering in the thousands, possibly tens of thousands. They're maintaining position at the very edge of our sensor range, but their technology appears to be significantly more advanced than anything we've encountered." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. Humanity had spent 10 years consolidating control over what they had believed to be the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. The possibility that something even more powerful existed beyond their borders had always been a theoretical concern, but one that had seemed increasingly unlikely as their exploration expanded. "Do we have any intelligence on their intentions?" Sarah asked. Cain's expression grew grimmer. 3 hours ago, they transmitted a single message on all frequencies throughout our territory. The translation is still being verified, but the preliminary analysis is troubling. The holographic display shifted to show a complex symbol that seemed to writhe and shift even in static representation. When Sarah looked at it directly, her mind struggled to process the geometric impossibilities it contained. The message translates roughly to, "The children have been playing with fire. The parents have returned home." Cain paused, letting the weight of those words settle. Sarah, we may have been fighting the galaxy's equivalent of a local police force, while the real power watched from the shadows. Sarah felt a familiar chill, the same sensation she had experienced 10 years ago when watching the Valorans die. Admiral, are you suggesting that the Galactic Council answered to someone else? I'm suggesting that 50 million years of galactic peace might have been maintained by something far more powerful than we realized. Something that's been absent from this region of space and has just returned to find their carefully maintained order replaced by human chaos. The construction crews outside continued their work, unaware that their peaceful rebuilding efforts might be about to become irrelevant. Sarah watched a group of young Valorans directing the installation of crystalline memory cores that would preserve their species' history for future generations. The irony was not lost on her that humanity's greatest triumph might be about to become their greatest liability. What are our options? Sarah asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Kane's smile carried none of the savage satisfaction that had characterized his expression during the Council War. The same options we've always had when faced with overwhelming odds. We adapt, we innovate, and we never stop fighting when something matters. He gestured toward the station construction. 10 years ago, we proved that friendship matters more than fear. If these newcomers think they can simply restore the old order by intimidation, they're about to learn why the galaxy learned to fear humanity. Sarah nodded, but a part of her wondered if humanity's capacity for violence, which had served them so well against the Council, would be sufficient against beings who might view entire galaxies as their domain. Admiral, what if we're finally facing opponents who are genuinely superior to us? Not just numerically, but technologically and strategically. Kane's cybernetic eye blazed with the same cold fire that had terrified the Council. Then we'll show them what the Valorans always understood about humanity. We're not the most advanced species in the universe. We're not the most ancient or wise, but we're the species that refuses to surrender what we care about, regardless of the odds. He gestured toward the memorial gardens visible through the station's transparent sections, where human children played alongside young beings from across the galaxy. Those children represent the future the Valorans died to protect. If these mysterious arrivals think they can simply erase 10 years of progress and restoration, they're about to discover why the galaxy's former masters learned to fear a species young enough to still believe in impossible victories. The transmission continued with tactical analyses and deployment orders, but Sarah's attention returned to the memorial gardens. Somewhere among those playing children were young Valorans who would never know their original homeworld, raised by humans who had adopted them after their species' near extinction. Their laughter echoed through the station's corridors, a sound that had once filled the crystal cities of a peaceful world. That laughter had motivated humanity's transformation from a single-system species to galactic conquerors. It had inspired the systematic destruction of the galaxy's oldest civilization. It had driven the creation of a new order based on protection rather than oppression. Now it might inspire something even greater, proof that some bonds transcend species, that some friendships can survive even the return of ancient powers, and that humanity's capacity for both love and war had no upper limits. As Kane's image flickered out and Sarah prepared to return to her duties, she took one last look at the memorial wall visible through the station's central hub. 6 billion names etched in stone, each one representing a life that had ended because they had chosen friendship over fear. The unknown fleet gathering at the galaxy's edge might possess technology beyond human comprehension. They might command powers that made the Council's former might seem primitive in comparison. They might represent threats that no amount of human ingenuity could overcome. But they would also learn, as the Council had learned, that humanity's greatest weapon had never been their ships or their compression weapons or their tactical brilliance. It had always been their absolute refusal to abandon those they considered family. The Valorans had given humanity the stars. Humanity had painted those stars with the blood of their friends' enemies. Now, as new threats emerged from the cosmic dark, those same stars would burn with whatever fire was necessary to protect the future that 6 billion deaths had purchased. Outside the station, the construction crews continued their work, building monuments to friendship in the shadow of approaching war. Inside, Sarah Chun prepared to help humanity face its greatest challenge yet: proving that love backed by unlimited fury could overcome even the return of ancient gods. The galaxy had already learned to fear humanity's vengeance. Soon it would witness humanity's protection, and the universe itself would tremble at the sound of human children laughing in defiance of impossible odds. Some bonds, Sarah reflected, were indeed stronger than death, more enduring than time, and more powerful than any force the cosmos could marshal against them. The Valorans had believed this truth strongly enough to die for it. Now humanity would prove it true enough to reshape reality itself. The stars waited, burning with anticipation for whatever came next.